On a suddenly not so casual Sunday morning, it is NFL Week 8. It is Sunday, October 30th, 2022. It is Circa Millions, the show. It is the Shark. It is the Gun. It is the Odds Fellow. It is Sharky Waters Nation. 9 Words of Lifestyle. Ride the wave. We're get out of the water. Guns picks. What's going on this morning, my brother?
I'm waking up on a beautiful Sunday morning. Yes, I did say the word beautiful for the first time on the show. 5-2 plus 7 units in college football. I need to carry this over to the NFL because, man, did I take a bath last week, 1-4. But guess what? I bounced back hard. I bounced back strong. I'm still up units for the year. What's going on, Odds Fellow? Welcome back. How you doing, buddy?
Got the old man who bets. Keep betting hat on right here. It's a little worn, a little old. Maybe he'll send me some new ones, but that's what we're going to do today. It's Sunday. It's a beautiful day, as the boys referenced, and we're going to keep betting. So that's what we're here for.
Music off, business mode engaged. Top play at the early card. Three-way collaboration play. We're going 1 o'clock. We're going out of division football. We're going to Ford Field in Detroit, Michigan. Guns picks. Detroit Lions, 1-5 on the campaign, off an L2 and a bye. Disrespectful football, catching the Dolphins on the road. An official.
Yeah, I'm liking the Detroit Lions coming back home plus 3.5 here. Let me tell you why. Listen, Miami is coming off a 16-10 flat win over the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, after losing 3 straight with Tua's return coming last week. So a little bit of rust there for Tua. Plus 31 net yards for the game, and plus 3 turnover ratio. Big decider in that game. Now, Detroit is 1-5 straight up, back-to-back road losses where they only scored 6 points total. That's right, 6 points total. That's 6 in one game, 0 in the other. And now Detroit comes back home where they play their best ball. They score 39 points per game at home, plus 1 point differential, 444 yards per game of total offense. Miami underperforms on the road this season. They have a minus 10 point differential. Their offense performs well but their defense gives up 53 more yards per game on the road than they give at home, and they're 1-2 straight up on the road. Also, you got to look at Miami 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 games, where Detroit is 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 games at home. So it's going to be a refreshing spot for Detroit coming back home, and you get the hook above a key number 3. So I'm taking Detroit plus 3.5, and that's a 1.5 unit play for me.
The Odds Fellow alignment and a total in this game. Talk to me.
Yeah, so let's not beat up the side here. I know Shark's going to touch on that one briefly, but just to get into the over a little bit, we're going to let DVOA and some of the statistics do the talking here. These teams are 6th and 15th on offense versus 20th and 31st on defense, right? So you get a nice little merge dynamic there. Both teams come in at 6.1 net yards per play. They do have also a negative point differential. So it shows you, even though, especially in the Lions case with the record backing it up, they're giving up points to lead to that point differential. So I think with Tua and the boys here getting healthy, they have a nice turf indoor track up in Detroit at Ford Field. I love this to soar over, even at the high number. It's 51.5 right now. Detroit comes in at 4-2 to the over. Miami 5-2 to the under. So a little counterpoint there. But you got to remember, there's been a lot of QB noise, right? Tua's in, backups in, the third string's in. Now these guys, like I said, are getting healthy. So take the over, take Detroit. We'll kick it over to Shark for the final points.
Yeah, and as we always mention every single week, the Circa Millions competition requires 5 plays. We are on Jacksonville right now, of course, discussed on the show on Thursday afternoon with Jay Money legend himself. We send great vibes as he's taking this weekend off. But as we continue on this, Detroit Lions are our first official play in the competition, and my first official play of this week. Detroit Lions plus 3.5. Discussed in detail by the Gun and Odds Fellow. But going through it a little bit deeper, if you really go through the Lions come in here on an L4, but I always talk about situational environmental analysis. Got to go back to week 3 at Minnesota. Very competitive game, a cover at a plus 7, 28-24 game. They were up by 14 points in the middle of the 3rd quarter. And Dan Campbell made a very questionable long field goal call, I believe it was, in a spot that was very confusing in 2022 analytics-driven football with the 0 or 7 effect. he did not go for it in a spot he probably should have, which is essentially unheard of in this year, where guys go for it no matter what. 4th and 20 on their own 10-yard line in the first quarter. We're going. But anyway, they ended up losing this game 28-24, came back the next week in an environment where they don't seem to function very well. Rare occasion you're going to be finding the Detroit Lions laying over 3 points at home in the last 2 or 3 seasons. They were, and they did not cover. They lost outright to the Seattle Seahawks. Then they went on the road. And as Guns mentioned, back-to-back games against A-list professional playoff-style defenses, a shutout, which we had correctly in Week 5 at New England, 29-0. Jared Goff's first outdoor game of the year, which seemed to be problematic for them. And, of course, at Dallas last week, a late melt in the second half. Now they come back. First home game since Sunday, October 2nd, where they function incredibly well against the spread, as an underdog, particularly over a field goal. And you go to the other side of this game very briefly. Miami comes in here showing lackluster quality on the road, and I think that's putting it mildly. Last 2 road games, Thursday, September 29th at Cincinnati, 27-15 loss, a game we had correctly. We knew to fade there. And at the Jets showing some win here, but 40-17, not representative at all. I think Detroit probably gets this game. I think they probably lose the game by 3 points on the number today. Speaking of the Jets home game in the division against the New England Patriots, a team that has owned them beyond historical regulations and normal patterns, and they come in here today on an L12 against New England. Guns picks. I will say it every week until we are no longer on this planet. A fan hat, a fandom, no jersey today, and a top pick. Is Guns muted?
Can't hear you. The gun and the official. He's wasting
Now
all
we're
that
back.
good
Now we're
analysis.
back. I hit the mute button. My fault. A little technical difficulty. I am back. Now let's talk about the New England Patriots here. I'm going back to the well with them. -2.5 here. 2-unit special. New England coming off a brutal Monday Night Football loss, 33-14 to Chicago, -130 net yard average and a -3 turnover ratio. Absolutely brutal performance for a Bill Belichick team. Now, New York Jets are kind of running a little bit hot here. Their last 4 games, they've won their last 4 games off of back-to-back road wins versus Green Bay, Denver, and now they're back home where they have a -3 point differential, 1-2 straight up at home. So really, you have a Jets team that plays better on the road than they do at home. Looking into the in-depth of the New York Jets in the last 2 games, their offense has not been very good. Their offense has regressed since putting in QB Zach Wilson over Joey Flacco. Last 3 games, their offense has put up 322 yards, 278 yards, and 260 yards in that order. So you're seeing the regression of this offensive team. Now, you have the New England Patriots on the road. They have a +3 point differential, and they hold their opponents to 35 yards less of offense than they do at home. Also, Shark brought up the history with this team. The Patriots have won straight up in the last 13 matchups dating back to 2016 from my count, and it goes even further than that. Also, the covering rate for New England is astounding in that regard as well. So you have New England coming off a bounce back off a Monday night primetime loss. You have the New York Jets team coming off back-to-back road wins, highest of highs, coming back home. Now they're going to play a divisional opponent. I think they're going to be pumped up for this game, but also you have to take into account they're not going to have their top running back and their top offensive performer in Breece Hall. He's out for the year. So I think this is going to be left on the back of Zach Wilson, and that's a spot that you do not want to be in if you're backing the Jets here. So I'm going to be taking the New England Patriots, my boys, -2.5, 2-unit special.
The odds fellow, same segue. A side and a total.
That's right. A lot of alignment early. Hope that plays nicely. But no, a little smaller play for me here on the Pats. Just a half unit at that 3. There's still some 2.5s out there. Guns alluded to a lot of the dominance, a lot of the difference. There's some interesting trends here, which, again, tread lightly against trends. But in the, when Bill Belichick fails to cover a spread by 21 points or more, which is a big number, right? And that's what happened last week against that Bears in that upset. He is 11-1 against the spread the following week and 12-0 straight up. Some of those numbers, if you peel it back without Brady, are still very strong. The the losses without Brady for him in that trend against very good football teams. Now here you do have the Jets. I think what worries me and why I weighed it down a little bit is just the motivational spot. Saleh does have these guys jacked up and playing a little bit differently. They've probably had this circled. These guys want receipts, and they definitely want receipts on Belichick and the Pats. But the play that I'm doing a 1 unit on here is the under. Right now that's 40. There still might be some 40 and a halves. You know, Belichick and the Pats and this defense is better against the pass compared to the run. 5th DVOA defensively versus 28th. But now the Jets come in with no Vera Tucker, right, at guard. No Breece Hall. This guy was probably the offensive rookie of the year, trending that way. And I think people are underestimating the drop-off between Michael Carter and James Robinson. When you look at it statistically, especially, Robinson obviously comes off the trade, has to learn the playbook. But Carter, who was in his neighborhood statistically, is a huge drop-off from Breece Hall. Yards after contact. Every way you slice and dice a running back, he just wasn't getting it done as much as Hall was, the bell cow that was making this thing work. So I do expect a lot of ball control from both sides. They're still going to try to run the ball. When you look at third down conversion rates, both teams are pretty poor. The Pats are better. The Jets come in here at 29th at 32.65%. And if you don't think that number is going to get worse without Breece Hall and Vera Tucker in the lineup, you're a crazy person. So I like the under here, 40 and a half, and I think it's going to be a messy one at MetLife.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. And I think, as you mentioned, coming off a bloated total with the Patriots defense being a sieve to Justin Fields and the boys on a short week last week, this should come down. It should be a tight Leatherhead-style football game. Speaking of Leatherhead football and a game that will not be in this category, my next official play, Arizona Cardinals on the road, +3.5. A lot going on in this game, but something we've talked about numerous times. The Arizona Cardinals on the road function far, far better than they do down in the desert for whatever reason. Go back to the beginning of last year. Arizona is 7-1 ATS on the road outside of the division. And you look at what's going on here with Minnesota. This is just a great fade spot of Minnesota. Minnesota comes in here on a dub 4. But again, a very fraudulent dub 4. You have to go through these games dating back to Sunday, September 25th. A win against Detroit, non-playoff. A win non-cover in London against New Orleans. A game that was back and forth against a non-playoff team there. Against Chicago in the division and at Miami without their quarterback. Arizona should get there today. I think Arizona probably wins outright. Arizona did win outright last year, 34-33. Did not cover. Getting points here, definitely the look. Oh, taking a breath. Next play. Dallas Cowboys hosting the aforementioned Anthony Latino. Yes, sir.
Before you jump into that, just to touch on that Cardinals Vikings, I am on that over 48.5. I think it's another good look. You talked about points. I mean, let analytics, do the talking here. We talked about DVO before. These teams going forward aggressively on fourth down, this could work against us, but I do think the variance in this case will help. These teams are second at 75% and 11th at 56.52% in terms of fourth down conversion rate. So they're going to go for it. They're going to make movement. Arizona's getting healthier, right? And this is really a must-win spot for them to keep an upward movement any chance they have left. They scored 42 points against a New Orleans defense on that Thursday night football game compared to 21 versus KC, 29 versus Las Vegas, which was in OT, 12 versus the Rams, 26 versus Carolina, 17 versus Philadelphia, or I think 9 versus Philadelphia. But think about that, right? 42 points. They finally got Hopkins back. They're finally getting a little bit healthier, and I think you're going to see a lot of the same here. So points, another over 48.5.
Yeah, completely agreed. And segue again, 1 o'clock, Fox Sports, AT&T Stadium. Guns picks. Dallas comes back here. Dak Prescott, game 2, coming back from an injury, showcasing quality, if you will, last week with a blowout second half against the Lions. Not coincidentally, they get yet another NFC North bottom-feeding opponent coming in here, and the Bears off a huge win on the road at New England last week. Dallas -9, -10, an official.
Yeah, you basically have the Chicago Bears coming off a big primetime win on the road last week. 33-14 is 9-point dogs. They dominated the net yards +130 that I alluded to before when I was talking about the Patriots, +3 turnover ratio in that regard. Now, Chicago, what are they? They're one-dimensional. They like to run the ball. They average 5.2 yards per carry at 181 yards on the ground. However, they are a bad passing team, and we've seen it week to week. For some reason, they can't pass. 188 yards per game passing, and their offensive line gives up 27 sacks total this season for a 22 0.7% sack rate. Absolutely awful number there. Also, you got Dax in his second game back. He got a little bit of the rust off last week versus Detroit. And I think he's going to be a little bit more loose, warmed up for this one here. This could be an improvement game for him on the offensive side. Now, look at Chicago from the trend standpoint, 2-11 against the spread in their last 13 road games versus a team with a winning record. And Dallas on the other side, 11-1 against the spread versus teams with a losing record. So you have Dallas with another home game. You have Dax coming back a little bit loose, going against a Chicago team that's living off the highs of highs on a short week, playing in a Monday Night Football primetime game and winning on the road. So I think this is going to be one of those spots that you're just not going to want to back the Chicago Bears, and the line is telling you that with the -9 here. I think this could be a public dog, in my opinion, too. If you're looking at the performance of what Chicago did last week, and you're seeing a high line, virtually the same line that they got last week on the road. And I think Dallas is probably going to blow them out here. So I'm going to be taking Dallas -9. I think it might be up to -10. I'd still take it at that as well. 1.5 unit play for me.
Anthony, any comments on this one, or should we keep it moving?
Keep it moving. Go Cowboys. You guys might get a little view of baby Dak and baby CD Lamb are running around this basement as we speak.
Running routes.
Next play, Raiders on the road. The buy hat is engaged. I'm going to throw it to Anthony for first comments in this game. We are on this in the competition. Las Vegas -1.5. It's getting steamed down. I'm not entirely sure why. Anthony, talk to us on Las Vegas -1 here.
Yeah, it's just really, another kind of buy low opportunity for the Raiders. I think the public perception versus maybe the sharps or the numbers. Obviously, you mentioned the steam. Maybe that's going a little bit the other way right now. But at least coming in, right, this team is 2-4, but they have a plus 13 point differential. You can make the argument very easily. They could be 5-1, 4-2, really good squad, a solid performance. And you really have a New Orleans team on a short week here that is struggling. So obviously there's some back against the wall stuff, but there's also some quarterback confusion. Jameis Winston finally healthy, ready to come back. But no, they leave the nod with Andy Dalton, somebody I just don't have the faith and the confidence with. The defense has underperformed all season. You get a team coming in with the defensive coordinator moving over into that head coaching spot, thinking at least that was what they were going to be able to maintain, and that's just not the case. So I think you get a matchup here with the Raiders offensively, Devontae Adams, the rest of that squad, Jacobs running the ball really well. Should be able to carve this New Orleans team up. So just kind of a buy low compared to those numbers.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the buy hat is engaged on a suddenly not so casual October 30th, 2022. A beautiful, sharp Sunday it is. And what we're looking at here is something we have discussed numerous times this campaign. Josh Daniels comes over here. Devontae Adams comes over here. The team just was really running on the low side of variance. And when you analyze pro football, sometimes it's not about just the team versus the team. It's just data. And you look at these games. I mean, just one possession loss after one possession loss. The team is still 2-4, an ex-playoff team from last year, and ultimately a team that is a bye team sustainably, probably for the rest of the year. And they have started to show signs dating back to Sunday, October 2nd, which was my top play of that particular week, a 2-unit special against Denver. 32-23 blowout at home. Came back. We had this as well at Kansas City on Monday Night Football. Could have won the game. Lost the game by 1 point. Had a chance to win with a 2-point conversion in the final minutes of the game. And then last week, Guns and I were on here. We suggested they would probably take care of Houston at home, and they did. They put up 38 points on what is a pretty representative defense. Now you come in here against a New Orleans team who I think for whatever reason has become a bit of a sharp side darling. And I'm not entirely sure why, because this team is not showing any sustainability. This team has 2 wins on the campaign. They won at Atlanta in week 1 by 1 point, a non-cover, and they won against Seattle, and they covered by a hook at home. Other than that, 10 points against Tampa Bay. You see how bad Tampa Bay has looked. At Carolina, a loss. You see how horrible Carolina's looked. Minnesota, we don't think is going to be that great long-term. A loss in London. A loss to Cincinnati, and then last week, a loss to Arizona, a team that had not won a home game in weeks. I think this team is just disengaged. I think they're disconnected. The quarterback situation is all over the place. But I think Dennis Allen is purely not a leader of men. We saw this when he was actually coaching the aforementioned Oakland Raiders at a far younger point in his career. He did not succeed very well. He's a great coordinator. He functioned well as a D coordinator for Sean Payton. Elevating a coordinator directly to the head coaching position oftentimes does not translate. Las Vegas Raiders on the road, first road win of the year. Let's get there today, boys. 1 unit official, minus 120. Couple more 1 o'clock games we're going to run through real quick just to touch on that. Guns picks. Any comments on the in-state, maybe not rivalry game, but certainly an interesting national and in the state of Pennsylvania watch? Philadelphia hosting Kenny Pickett and the Steelers on a very inflated minus 11 figure. Any comments?
I mean, you see the line at minus 11. You see the total hitting here around like 42.5, 43. Kind of correlates to me that it's going to be an Eagles blowout here, but it's not one of those situations that I really want to back anyone in this spot. Kenny Pickett still got a lot to prove if he's going to be the guy. They kind of played extremely flat versus Miami in primetime last week. Now they got to go play in-state rival. It's right up the road, I guess, so to speak, to go play an Eagles team that is creeping up to be one of the perennial favorites to win the NFC for the Super Bowl. It's not something I'm going to step in the way of taking Philly. I think that line is just kind of already lost me completely. And really, you could see potentially looking at the other side, you could probably see another flat spot type of low scoring game like you saw last week with Miami. Who knows? But it's nothing that I'm really interested in playing.
Yeah, I had said this midweek. I think the lean here would be Philadelphia. I think if you look at Philadelphia off a bye week, coming back here, as much as people might want to suggest you should be fading Philadelphia, I had discussed this. Fading a team that's 6-0 technically is not necessarily a great idea. You want to be fading teams that are 6-0 against the spread, because oftentimes when you're 6-0, you just are at a higher quality than your opponent, and you're just beating teams. When you're covering every game, that is the fade point. Of course, that's why we're trying to fade Atlanta Falcons at every point in time. But when you really start to go through this game, I think fading Pittsburgh here in a small window is actually a sharper look. If you go back to the last two games, Pittsburgh is 2-0 ATS last two in the Pickett era. Home win against Tom Brady, the aforementioned confusing Bucs, to leave it at that. And then last week at Miami, plus 7.5, they did get there 16-10. So now you come in here 2-0 ATS last two, road sequence off a cover and a game you exerted yourself in the heat in Miami. And you get Philadelphia coming in here really in just, I would say, a normalized regular spot. I mean, that sounds pretty blasé, but I mean, there's nothing to look ahead to and there's nothing to look back to. They're off a bye week, and next week they get Houston. So this game stands alone. Why wouldn't they hammer this team? They're 2-0 ATS at home outside of the division. Monday Night Football week 2, blowout against the aforementioned Minnesota Vikings, and then a cover, a backdoor, but still a cover against Jacksonville in week 4. I would look to Eagles here with a free play, and I don't think the Steelers have it in them today. Anthony, any comments, or should we keep it going?
Well, look, you got Philadelphia, the home team, coming here back home for games 3, 4, and 5. I think Brett. Oh, wait, that's the wrong. Sorry, wrong sport, wrong team. I'm off. Go Phillies. I hate the Astros. No, I got nothing else.
I got one more point to make on this one. So I think that I saw the team total on this one, and I don't have it in front of me, but I could have sworn a couple of days ago I saw the team total for the Pittsburgh Steelers at like 15 or something like that. A look at the under on that one would be probably a good spot here. I mean, if you're thinking that Philly's going to blow this team out, like Shark just mentioned, I don't think they're going to score above two touchdowns. So it'd be a good look to look at the under team total on Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, final 1 o'clock game. Nothing official on this, but let's discuss it for maybe 60 to 90 seconds. The aforementioned Falcons here, coming off their first non-cover of the year, which I had correctly last week with Cincinnati. Cincinnati did hammer them finally, 35-17. Now they come back home as a home favorite, their highest figure of the year as a favorite. Maybe not surprisingly against in-conference or in-division rival Carolina Panthers, who are in complete turmoil at this point. But Carolina Panthers did cover in the division last week against the Bucs and win outright. I had suggested I thought this might be a little bit of a buy low continuously on the Panthers, particularly where Atlanta is so hot ATS and now in an inflated figure. It's going to be tough, but I do think I had said the coach, I believe his name is Wilkes. He used to be the coach of Arizona. When he kicked Robbie Anderson off the sideline, it shows this team is not giving up. They're trying to rid themselves of bullshit energy, and they're trying to play. And I think the tanking element is so overstated in mainstream media. These guys really are not tanking. They're professional athletes. They're playing for contracts. These guys have grinded their whole life to get to this point. They're on TV. They got eyeballs all over them. They're not giving up. And particularly with interim coaches who are trying to prove they could potentially take this team to the next level or maybe get a head coaching job with another team. The entire Panthers franchise, except for maybe the GM and the owner, have motivation to ball out here. So free play, I would take Carolina. It's a 4.5 and it's getting steamed down. I guarantee you that is sharp steam. There's no way Joe Public is taking the 2-5 Panthers here. Guns, couple comments on this one, and then we'll keep it rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that one. I think that the look there is definitely taking Carolina. I mean, taking it Atlanta. Atlanta is a good. Everyone's like, oh yeah, Atlanta's a good covering team. They went on this huge covering team, but they went on a covering spree as dogs. I mean, this was a team that everybody undervalued in multiple spots versus what they considered good teams. Now you got them sitting at home as a favorite, -4, -3.5, depending on what book you're looking at, against a Panthers team that, you know, a lot of changes, a lot of movement as far as personnel and coaching is concerned. Sometimes that is a positive movement. And like what Shark says, it's like teams don't tank. Players don't tank. Players want to win every single time they go out there every Sunday. So don't consider this as a complete tank job, you know, especially the quarterback position. I'm sure, you know, I can't think of the guy's name now off the top of my head because I'm drawing my morning Sunday brain. But I think this is a good spot to just take the Panthers. The change in quarterback's perfect. The coach change is positive, and they're playing an Atlanta team as a favorite. You got to be taking the Panthers, I believe.
Yeah, even at 6-1 against the spread with that lone loss last week, right? They're still running hot, ATS for Atlanta. So you get over a field goal in a division matchup here. Carolina trending upward, Atlanta maybe trending down.
Yeah, and one final point on this. Tanking in professional football is, to a certain degree, a load of BS, in my opinion. In the NBA, tanking is very real because you have to win a lottery ball to get the top pick. Not only that, NBA basketball is so top-heavy. There's rarely ever more than 4 or 5 really blue-chip prospects in a draft. In NFL football, you get 4 to 6 rounds of just depth of talent. So the tanking element is just not a thing in the NFL. And again, with the schedule, only 17 games, in an NBA calendar of 82, I mean, you can justifiably tank 15 games. In NFL, it just doesn't happen like that. So if you ever hear anybody on TV say this team is tanking in pro football, just let it be a side narrative that is really not applicable here. Going to 4 o'clock slate. We're going 4:05 p.m. We're going back to the gun. Guns picks. Texans come home here off the aforementioned blowout loss in Vegas, catching a Titans divisional game against a Titans team that really has become a public darling this year, covering a ton of tight window spreads as a short favorite. Line is moving down. Liberty's finest, Malik Willis, starting the game today. Guns picks, an official.
Man, I see 94 of you watching us live. I appreciate you joining us on this beautiful Sunday morning. While you're at it, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel and make sure you support us properly. But let's talk about the Houston Texans here. Now, you got Tennessee coming off a 4 in a row, winning 4 in a row, beating Indiana. The Indianapolis Colts 19-10. While losing the net yardage battle, -38 net yards. An interesting point here, Tennessee is sitting here at 4-2 straight up. They have lost the net yards in every single one of their games this year. So let's get into Houston here. Now, they've lost 4 out of the last 5 games, including last week versus the Las Vegas Raiders, 38-20, plus 4 net yards for the game, and they lost by 18. A lot of that had to do with the turnovers. In looking at the overall numbers, you compare these teams statistically, virtually identical. You have the Tennessee Titans -100 net yard average for the season. Houston -102 net yard average. Tennessee -2 point differential for the season. Houston -5 point differential for the season. The biggest difference here, like I already said, Tennessee 4-2 straight up. Houston 2-4 straight up. Now you have Houston. They've covered 4 out of the last 5 in this matchup. Houston beat them in the last game 22-13 as 10-point dogs last year on the road, and they lost to them 28-25 at home as 10.5-point dogs. So in both situations, they were 10 points or more as a dog. Now they're sitting here at +2.5. A lot of that has to do with the changeover in quarterback. Tannehill is not going to be playing. It's going to be Willis. He's going to be taking over the reins, so there may be a little bit of uncertainty. Not any game film really on him, except for if you look in the preseason. So there may be a little outlier there as far as their production is concerned. They may be better, they may be worse. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. But Houston is 4-0 against the spread versus conference opponents. Home team is 9-3 against the spread in the last 12 meetings. I'm going to be back in this Houston team. I got him at plus 2.5 because I bought the line early before the Willis news. I would still probably take him on the money line here I think it's at -1, minus half a point here. So I wouldn't mind taking him at money line as well. But my number plus 2.5, 2-unit special.
Yeah. And Anthony, I'll throw it to you in a second. Just one comment on this. When you look at this division in detail, it seems to be a lack of zigzag with these teams for whatever reason. The Tennessee Titans own the Indianapolis Colts. It doesn't matter. Home, road, they could be playing on Mars. They just own that team. But the other side of this is Houston plays Tennessee well. And it doesn't seem to be going up and down on a revenge back and forth here. I totally agree with you. I think Houston is the sharp side in this game. But I do think when you insert a quarterback in his first professional start, you just open up a bit of an unknown. Anthony, any comments on this one?
No, I think the Malik Willis thing is interesting here for Tennessee. But again, I've been low on this Tennessee team. I think holding it together all season. So I like the side. I think, you run with it there and back a scrappy Houston team.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. And 425 Fox Sports. We're going at Lumen Field, Seattle, Washington. Two public darlings at once. How can the public win this game? You have the Giants coming in here 6-1, the Seahawks 4-3. I don't think anybody in the world in preseason expectations and prognostication had either of these teams even close to these records. This looks like a throwback to Russell Wilson prime and maybe a little Eli Manning prime. What is going on here? Guns pick. Seattle at home, -3, unofficial.
Yeah, the public darlings collide here in Seattle today. I mean, New York Giants are 6-1 straight up. Yes, I did say that. 6-1 straight up. I'm as shocked as you are here, folks. They're coming off a win where they probably should have lost as a 3-point dog to Jacksonville, 23-17 on the road. I mean, this team just cannot be stopped. 436 yards of total offense from them. Danny Dimes, what? Now you got Seattle. They got a strong offense as well. They're off back-to-back wins. They just beat the LA Chargers 37-23 on the road, dominating them in the net yardage too. Plus 214 net yards, and they put up 6.3 yards per carry on the ground. Plus, I mean, it's an unbelievable anomaly here. Now, one of the keys to this game that I found, and this is the reason why I'm to be taking Seattle -3, is the offensive line versus the defensive line, how it's done, the battle of the trenches. You look at the New York Giants offensive line, they've given up 20 sacks this season for a 10.9% sack rate. On the road, they give up 11.8% sack rate. Now you look at the Seattle defensive line, they average 11.7% sack rate at home. So the defensive line is definitely somebody that can put pressure on you and get to the quarterback, and that's going to be tough for Danny Dimes. Now look at the Seattle offensive line. They've given up an 8.7% sack rate at home, but the New York Giants on the road, their defensive line doesn't really put pressure on the quarterback. 1.3% sack rate, very low indeed. So the quarterback's going to have time. He's going to get the ball to the receivers. You're playing at home. You're playing with the high decibel stadium in Seattle. And this is a Giants team going from Jacksonville on the East Coast, traveling to the West Coast to go play a Seattle team on a back-to-back, coming off a big win in Jacksonville. Now they're going to go carry that momentum over on a different climate environment. So I'm going to be taking Seattle -3. It's only a 1-unit special, but just because the Giants have screwed me so much this year, I got to drop my unit a little bit lower here, but I'm going to be taking Seattle -3.
Yeah, and you make that point. It's hard to sustain the way the Giants are playing football. This is not a team that is winning every game by 20 points outright. They are down in every single game and just are catching one-offs. And of course, in any sport, we talk about this on a frequent basis. Most teams don't have 60 minutes of their A game. So people always say, oh, the backdoor came out. The point of that is that certain teams will say, we got to come out and get them. We want to get out front. Other teams will say, let them go nuts and we'll get them in the second half. A lot of times the back door, quote unquote, is intentional. And teams actually know they can't play amazing for 60, so they do coast a little bit and push late. The Giants could be doing that because I think the Giants are intelligent. I think Brian Daboll is a very, very above average schematic and emotional leader of that group. So this could be just a thing, but I do think Seattle has the advantage point here. And I know Anthony Latino, the odds fellow, aligns with all of that.
Yeah, I mean, look, 6-1 straight up. It's also 6-1 against the spread. A lot of those spots they've been underdogs, so we know how that team is functioning. They're in that spot again here, but I think Guns alluded to the travel, and it's more than just going from Jacksonville back to New York over to the West Coast to on the Seattle trip. A couple weeks prior to that, this team was actually in London against the Packers. Then they come home. They don't take the bye week. That was intentional by Daboll and the Giants. You know, teams get the choice to choose. For whatever reason, they didn't. They come back home, beat Baltimore, then go to Florida and Jacksonville. So you've got, 4 or 5 straight weeks here of travel and back and forth and time zone madness, including a trip across the pond to kick it off. They've played well in it, but like Shark said, they're taking advantage of opportunities, undisciplined teams, penalties, turnovers. That was the point with Jacksonville last week. Jacksonville shot themselves in the foot over and over again, leaving it up there for the Giants to take advantage, and they have. So credit to them, but I just think too much kind of boiling up here. When you look at this, the splits here, this is probably one of the better offenses the Giants have faced. Seattle's performed well. Geno Smith has performed well all year. So I just think that offensive to defensive DVOA split is a good matchup. The travel spot is the perfect storm. So I like it at 3 or under for Seattle.
That's a great point. I hadn't even looked at that. I mean, this is probably the worst travel you'll find for any team in the entire league in a 4-game window. London, New York, Florida, Seattle. That is unbelievable. I think that this is probably where it ends for the Giants today. This is great stuff here, guys. And staying with great stuff, we're going to a game which I think there's a little bit of a conversational dispute here. Anthony Latino looking at the Rams. The Rams in the division have gotten absolutely owned sustainably versus Jimmy Garoppolo and the Niners in the regular season. Of course, they did win in the playoffs last year. However, you get a revenge game, you get a tight window, you get a line that opened up, I believe, with the Rams favored and steamed over aggressively towards San Francisco off some losses themselves. Tough game for me, but an official for the odds fellow.
Yeah, I do like the Rams here to finally get back on track. They're coming off a bye, and I think San Francisco really is just too banged up in what is going to be another tough division game. Now, there's a ton of counter narratives and points. This team you mentioned, the fact that Kyle Shanahan in the regular season has just absolutely owned this Rams team and Sean McVay, and I don't know why. It's interesting. They did beat him in the playoffs, but I think I heard some really interesting stats and breakdowns about the Niners here, and without Kyle Juszczyk and that fullback in that offense, Kyle Shanahan really struggles to call plays the way he wants, to get the passing attempts the way he wants. That's not because they're featuring the fullback, but it's because of the personnel that they're rolling out. So I think that alone, with his uncertainty, some of the other injuries that they have, they're still banged up defensively. I'm long on this Niners team all season, but I think it's the perfect motivational spot against the perfect situational injury spot here. The Rams do get Van Jefferson back, hopefully solidify the offense a little bit better. They've struggled on the offensive line. We watched that in the Cowboys matchup where the Cowboys and a very good defensive line and very good defense took advantage of a bad Rams O-line. Here, again, I'm hoping the Niners injuries, the Niners more recent woes also come into effect, and they won't be able to generate as much pressure against Matt Stafford in that O-line. So, it's a short line. It's a small line. I don't love the steam, but overall do like the Rams in this spot. They come in 2-4 against the spread, so hopefully a little regression as well on that number, something we talked about before.
Yeah, I don't really have much on this game. I had suggested earlier this week I thought San Francisco might sustain the upward movement. I think there's just great points to either side. I'm not officially on anything here. Guns picks, any comments on this one?
I had a lean, and we talked about it before the show. I talked about it with the odds fellow. I kind of leaned on the 49ers just because it was just the coaching matchup. For some reason, Shanahan has McVay in his back pocket. He's no matter what the circumstances are in the team from one side or the other, it seems like the 49ers have always had him figured out. And I can't understand that why. And he brought up some great points. No Kyle Juszczyk. that may be a factor of why they win and lose. But for me, I think it's just not a trend I want to step in front of right now, especially seeing how the 49ers performed against Kansas City last week. I think there's going to be one of those bounce back elements that are going to play into effect as well, chip on the shoulder type mentality. So a divisional game off a bad loss, really in a primetime spot, because that was the game of the week last week. So I think the 49ers will really want to show out here. No official plays for me on this one. I do lean the 49ers, however.
No Debo either. I was waiting for that news, but it doesn't look like that dropped too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Final game of the 4:00 slate. This game is just an absolute disaster to cap, in my opinion. You get the Colts coming here at 3-3 at home. You get the Commanders coming here 3-4 off an outright win. You get Matt Ryan removed, which I think is very controversial to a certain degree. I think he obviously has not looked very good, but I don't know what this move is about. I mean, this is no disrespect to Sam Ellinger coming out of Texas. I think this kid's a good prospect, but I just think throwing a guy under the table at 3-3 when they've shown upward movement recently in their offense, particularly at home, I think Frank Reich is more so playing for his own job potentially than the season and the long-term health of the franchise, which you don't want to see. You don't want to see a guy put his ego and his career over the team. So I think it's a questionable move. Again, it's nothing personal with either of these guys. I just think Matt Ryan, I don't know. I don't like the move. And, of course, Taylor Heineke in here for Carson Wentz should be an upward movement point. I got nothing on this game. Guns picks. Anything on this game?
I got nothing in this game. I think the only thing I could tell you is I think the Commanders are going to be a public team this week. And it's kind of remarkable to see the public even jumping on the Commanders at all this season, and it's just all predicated on the quarterback switch. I think there's too much uncertainty there. I have no knowledge of the quarterback and how he's performed with the team, even in the preseason. This is a game I'm staying so far away from. It's like I have no interest even seeing the score. So that one I'm going to take a big old pass on.
This is the Degen special. If you're betting this,
very much so.
You might have gone too far.
Yeah,
I said I felt like this is a minor league football game, and it's just the quality's not going to be there. I mean, of course, the conventional wisdom would suggest an under, but I do think that that's probably where this could go over. I mean, it sounds ultra contrarian, but like
the Colts are 6-1 to the under. Commanders not on either over under top list, but Colts have been trending that way during the season. So
yeah, and 40 is a low total. You get backup quarterbacks. The narrative point is there will be no points. This is probably one of those games that somehow just gets over 40. It just some disastrous defensive touchdown, like some down deep nonsense going on here or whatever. But anyway, taking a breath. 43 minutes in the book. Sharky Waters Nation, 9 words of lifestyle. Ride to every out of the water. 8:20 p.m. NBC Sports. Highmark Stadium, Orchard Park, New York. Anthony Latino, the odds fellow. The Green Bay Packers come in here looking horrible, to put it mildly. You're buying them this week. What's going on here?
Buy low, buy low. One of my favorite things to do. Green Bay comes in 2-5 against the spread this season, mostly as favorites, most likely in those numbers. Bills 4-2 against the spread. So we don't have a huge sample size of the Packers functioning as a dog, especially a double-digit dog. I was kind of shocked when this number opened up. Maybe it's a little telling. Maybe it's line strength. But what I'm keying in on here is Dave. Oh, we get some background noise, so let me know if it gets too loud. You guys take over. But Dave, which is a component of DVOA, so they take the preseason rankings and projections plus the actual. Dave is projecting here, Green Bay to regress from 20th DVOA to 11th. So I do think some of that's going to swing back the other way. Fun stat, I don't think this can get any worse than last week. The Packers were 0-4 on third down last week, the first time since 1999. Really interesting that they couldn't get anything moving on the field in a game that they led in the first half, but then ultimately trailed. The Bills on the other side have beaten up some good teams and some bad teams, right? They've really beaten up on the Rams, who were struggling early, the Titans, the Steelers, and then they were very impressive too in 2 tight games against the Ravens and Chiefs. I think those scores against the Ravens and Chiefs are also telling to what we're going to get here. A tighter game, a smaller window. This total right now is set and where I bet it at 47.5. I think I got it at 47. I do like the under. Those 2 aforementioned games against the Ravens and the Chiefs that I was talking about were combined 63 and 64 points. 43 and 44 points. So I think you're going to get closer to those scores, right? 23-20, 24-20. I think the Packers bounce back up. They've been bad on defense, but a lot of that, they're worse against the run. Luckily here, from a matchup perspective, you have a Buffalo team that really can't run the ball very well. They like to use Josh Allen in that spot, and maybe they will today too. But I think Green Bay will be able to control the explosive plays, maybe limit the passing, and not get burned as much against some of these other matchups that they've had early in the year against the run. So I like Green Bay to keep it close. When you have a total like this, taking those points at a premium, that's what I'm doing here. I'm pairing that under 47 with the 10.5. That number's moved a little bit, but I like Green Bay to at least keep it closer.
Guns picks, comments.
Yeah, I probably align there with Odds Fellow. The total in that one is really the one that I'm looking at here. I think that the under is a good look. I see it here at 47. Line at 10.5 for Buffalo. You never know which Buffalo team's going to come out. It's a primetime game. You have a Packers team that really hasn't shown anything. But the one thing that they've shown is their scores have been a lot lower. Same thing even with the Bills too in these spots. So I would probably lean under the 47. Nothing official yet, but I may go that direction by prime time.
One other ATS trend I forgot I'll sneak in before we kick it back to guns would be that NFL underdogs this season in particular in 2022 are 62, 45, and 1. That's 58 percent against the spread. Dogs of more than 3 points are 44 and 22, so 67% against the spread. A few teams that we've already talked about fit the bill this week with that. That's the Lions, the Cards, the Panthers we briefly mentioned, as well as the Packers, right, at the plus 11.5 or plus 10, and now one of those bigger numbers. So hopefully that trend continues in our favor.
Yeah, I tend to actually disagree with you guys on this one. I had said this earlier in the week. I mean, of course, I do really enjoy Josh Allen Campaign 5 football. So maybe I'm just a little biased here. But when I start to look at Green Bay, I don't see anything impressive. This is my problem with taking Green Bay here. To buy low, I need to see something that we could go back to. What are we going back to here? I mean, go through their schedule. Their wins have come against a bad Chicago team, particularly early on. Chicago's coming a little now. In week 2, Chicago was useless. Tampa Bay, we thought that was an impressive win in week 3. How impressive was that? And then they beat New England in overtime in Bailey Zappe's first NFL game. So those are their 3 wins. They just lost to the Giants. They got hammered by the Jets, and they lost to a Washington team with Taylor Heineke. Washington hadn't been able to beat anybody. So I don't necessarily, because theoretically buy low means versus the law of averages, that the long-term average is higher. I don't know if the long-term average for this team is higher. So my take on this game is I think Buffalo could get there at this 10.5 figure. And I do think, again, when you look at this schedule for Green Bay, next week they play at Detroit. That theoretically would be more of a buy spot for them. And Buffalo is just in that environment where, I mean, if we're being honest, I'm going to pull up their schedule here for a second, but Buffalo is not really showing signs of letdown football. I mean, outside of a game in Miami, which is obviously brutal travel, but a game they also dominated. They had 500 yards of offense in that game and only scored 19 points. I mean, this has been highly impressive stuff. At LA in the opener by 21, Tennessee, primetime game by 34, Baltimore push in the rain, which was a very impressive effort there. Blowout on their only line corollary spot at home against Pittsburgh, minus 11 or whatever that was, 38-3. And then at Kansas City, a very impressive win. This is where I'm saying, like, if you're going to, like I said, you can't really buy low with Green Bay's average being sustainably low. Like, how are you going to fade high where Buffalo's average is sustainably high? Like, I just think that's where you're getting your 10.5 line. Like, it's like, I go like this. They're just so separated. So that's your 10.5 right there. And I just think that they're telling you a story. Of course, it is NFL football. It's sharp. So we'd be shocked if Buffalo won this game by 18 plus points. It's going to be sharp. It's 8:20 p.m. But again, that's why conversation wins in this life. Different angles, different people, 3 top dogs, 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water. That's going to be the show for today. My top plays, Detroit plus 3.5, Arizona plus 3.5. Buy hat engaged on the road. Stand the hell up, Raiders. Let's get going. Las Vegas, 120 on the money line. Guns picks alignment, Detroit plus 3.5, Dallas minus 9, New England on the road to continue eternal domination of the Jets, -2.5. Houston, 4:05 p.m. on the road, +2.5, or excuse me, at home, +2.5. And Seattle to get the Giants. Finally, a 6-1 Giants team traveling across the world here week to week. And it is going to come to an end today, we think. Anthony Latino, the odds fellow, Detroit +4, and the over in that game, which I think is a sharp over, 51.5. New England -3, under 40. Vegas -1. Rams +1. Seattle -3, alignment with the gun. And late night, as we just discussed, Green Bay +10.5, under 47. Circa Millions, the show in the books, week 8. We appreciate you guys on YouTube, Twitter, everybody that interacts. We try to bring you the best product, hype analysis, discussion, and top plays every time we come on the air. We love to do it, and we appreciate you guys more than words. Guns Picks, 7-Point Sunday. A beautiful one it is, October 30th. Close them out, and let's dominate.
We had almost 100 of you join us live tonight on YouTube. So while you're at it, before you leave this YouTube page, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the Dad Bods YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the content that is getting provided daily, week to week. So thanks for joining us. We appreciate you. We will see you Friday for the college football show. And let's keep cashing. Let's keep winning. And as always, let's keep dancing.